Hello again. I'm Braddock Supervisor John Cook. Welcome back to Braddock Neighborhood News, the program I'm using to provide you with information on issues facing our community and ideas on how we can strengthen our neighborhoods. One of my priorities is ensuring that county code is enforced, whether in the form of overgrown grass, overcrowding, hoarding, or noise complaints. These issues negatively affect our neighborhoods and must be addressed. Luckily, Fairfax County has a phenomenal division called the Department of Code Compliance that my office works closely with to help get the problems identified and fixed. Joining me today are Jeff Blackford, the Director of Code Compliance, and Gabe Zakak, one of his Code Compliance investigators. Jeff, Gabe, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you.
It's good having you here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for our neighborhoods. Code compliance, it's important, and it kind of occurs to me that, we have zoning code, we have code for really a couple reasons. One, there's a health and safety aspect to it, and then there's the county code is sort of our agreement as neighbors of how we're going to, conduct ourselves as we affect our, our next door neighbor. And yeah, it's a neighborhood of 1.1 million people in the county, but it's our agreement that we know that things that we do on our property can affect the property next door. And so if we've got 10 broken down cars in our front yard, that's not good for our neighbors. And so, your home is your castle. What you do inside your home, as long as it's safe and healthy, is fine. But if we're negatively affecting the neighborhood, then that's our neighbor's business too. And that's kind of the balance, right, Jeff?
It is. And, all of our codes were established through a public process, and they're really, the intent is to represent the intent and the spirit of the community to live in harmony and safely. And
so some of the things, why don't we kind of go through the list for us of, don't list them all, we'd be here for a week, of all the codes, but the primary ones that your office deals with in our neighborhoods.
Absolutely. The Fairfax County Zoning Ordinance, we enforce that. The Virginia Maintenance Code, unpermitted construction under the Building Code, the Noise Ordinance, the Blight Ordinance, the Grass Ordinance, and residential aspects of the Fire Code. I think I covered them all.
That's correct.
And zoning in our residential neighborhoods gets into overcrowding, that is multifamily homes or the boarding houses, as well as the issue of having sort of the second kitchen issue, or two houses within a house. And that's an important one from a health and safety standpoint. Why don't we talk about that?
Okay, the
overcrowding and why we don't allow, two homes within a home, why we don't allow people to build a standalone apartment in their basement, complete with kitchen and everything else.
Our zoning ordinance, particularly in our residential districts, is established based on the premise that we would have one house on one lot with one family. Now, trends in the community have started to change. We have a lot of multicultural families in Fairfax County and with extended families, and that's perfectly fine. But the homes in the zoning ordinance is not designed to be a hotel or a motel or a boarding house with multiple families.
And as many people know, the general rule is in your basic single family home, you can have one family, that is people related by blood or marriage, and we don't cut that off, so it can be a rather big one.
That's right.
And you can have two unrelated boarders, or you can have four unrelated people in one house, four people in the house, or you can have the two families of three in each, so a parent and two kids and a parent and two kids together. And we do that. One, we know that if houses get overcrowded, especially among strangers, we can have conflict. And we know that in a lot of these illegal boarding houses, we've seen unsafe electric, and we've seen plumbing issues and real safety and health issues.
Well, and we see multiple kitchens. We're not talking about wet bars and the like. We're talking about multiple kitchens. In many cases, the houses are subdivided. We've seen as many as 6 and 7 distinct housing units in a single-family house.
And part of that too is the density that we've designed neighborhoods, the power grid, the width of the sewer pipes, the stormwater system. Everything is designed to assume a certain number of people, parking spaces on the street.
Absolutely.
And so if you take a single family home and you split it into 6 apartments, and you have 18 people living in it, and you replicate that over and over again, the infrastructure of the community can't handle that either.
And the impact.
That's where the unpermitted issues come into play, because
Right.
when these houses are being divided up, a lot of times they're not coming in and getting permits and making sure that inspectors are inspecting the electrical and plumbing and other systems like that.
Right, and Gabe, that's your job every day. You're out there looking at these houses, and I think it's important for people to know that if somebody wants to build a hotel or an apartment building, we have a code that allows that. You get the zoning approval and you build that, and you'll have proper inspections and everything else. But if somebody's taking a house and they're cutting it up into 6 pieces and running a bunch of wires all over the place, bad stuff can happen.
Yeah, absolutely, and something like that would never get approved. So that's a common thing we see, because oftentimes, it's just you walk in there and you can just tell that that's not how the house was originally built. It's undergone a lot of alterations, and it does become a safety issue.
I remember when I was Civic Association president, I was learning about illegal boarding houses, and county staff had put together a great video to help educate us. And there was a picture, and it was of a wall with an outlet, and there was a handwritten sign on the wall, and it said, "Don't use outlet when the shower is running." and that brought out that safety aspect of it. You can obviously there was a problem with the electric in the house and the water and everything else. And so that's the importance of the code from a safety aspect.
Yeah. And then also with some of the extreme cases, you'll see on a 2-level house, there's stairways taken out, so you can't access the house from the first level. You got to go. You can only enter through the basement. So in case there's a fire, that can be a serious situation. A 2-level house is supposed to have stairs that go up and down.
Right. So Gabe, talk to us a little bit about your work. You're out there investigating complaints that come in, and what do you see out there?
Well, me personally, I do zoning, property maintenance, and unpermitted. Mainly, 75% of my cases right now are dealing with unpermitted construction. It seems that a lot of unpermitted construction is going on. So a lot of times people don't know, so I'm just in the neighborhoods trying to educate people that permits and inspections are good for a lot of different reasons.
They keep you safe, but they also deal with property values.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to sell your house, if the person who might be buying it comes in and says, "That's a great addition on your house," and then goes to the public records and sees that the addition doesn't show up on the public records, that means there was no building permit. It was never inspected.
That's correct. Yeah, we often sometimes see that and get those referrals, and at that time, we have to investigate it and make sure that it goes through the proper, to make sure it's safe.
And people want to realize that if they think they're getting a benefit by saving a few pennies or a few dollars or maybe even a lot of dollars on a permit for that addition, they're going to lose it at the end, because that prospective buyer they may have trouble selling their house.
It's a lot more cost. It's a lot more cost to try to get it approved after the fact. It's a lot harder to perform an inspection when the walls are already up.
There you go.
And certainly, and you mentioned the electrical side of it, you wouldn't want to buy a house that was unsafe or might be dangerous to your family. And if the work was done without permits and without inspections, you've got electrical, plumbing, and gas, which could be extremely dangerous if it's not done properly. So you want to make sure your family's safe.
Going back to the neighborhood aspect of things, you said something about 10 cars in a front yard or something like that. You don't want a house with a shed that's bigger than a house. So that's why another reason the permitting aspect is good to regulate, and the zoning to regulate what is permissible and what is not.
It's part of that respect for our neighbors thing. When we're doing something in our house, if we let the grass grow to be 3 feet tall and there's a big falling down shed or there's broken down equipment in the front yard, that reflects in the whole street and the whole neighborhood. And then every home every home sees its value to go down, but maybe even more importantly, from an everyday just living aspect, we want people to have pride in their neighborhoods, and we don't want somebody to feel bad about, oh, the place is falling apart, or what problem are we having?
Well, and for the same reason, we are very sensitive to unoccupied homes, because in some cases they're non-resident owners that just don't live there. In some cases they're in foreclosure, and tall grass becomes an attractive nuisance. Then you have people breaking into the structure, and it continues to the decline of the neighborhood. So we want to hear about those so we can address those maintenance issues.
Jeff, that's a good point. I recall the house we used to own, the house in back of us, the renters moved out, and then apparently one day, and I'm sure there was some problem, somebody wasn't paying something they were supposed to pay, but the electric was cut off. Now you might think, well, okay, fine, nobody's in the house, so you don't need power. Well, that meant that there was no air conditioner and other things, and apparently a mold problem started, and there was still water running, and it was like $50,000 for someone to fix that house.
Absolutely.
So, so that's part of why we have the codes, and why they're important. Let's talk a little bit about how the process works. We don't send out code police to go and inspect everyone's house. One, we don't have enough people to do that. Right. Two, we're not trying to be imposing on people or tell them what they have to do. So it's a complaint-based system, and Jeff, that's by design.
I'll start off, and then I'm going to hand it over to Gabe a little bit. We are complaint-driven. We don't drive the streets looking for violations. We really want to respond to the neighborhood concerns. And so we receive complaints. Actually, we receive over 17,000 calls a year, which result in about 7,500 cases. We also receive over 5,000 web complaints a year. So we've got multiple ways where people can contact us. Phone, we like to talk to people on the phone because we can better understand what their concerns are. What do you see? What time is it happening? What does it look like? But we also realize people are busy, so we have web complaints and all. So we'll take those complaints if we don't already have a case open, and if it's something that this department will handle, we'll open up a case. And if we don't handle it, we'll refer it to a sister agency. But if it's ours, we'll open up a case, and then we're broken up by by geographic areas, and then we would assign it to an investigator, and I'll let Gabe pick it up from where he takes it.
So depending on the nature of the complaint, we'll do some preliminary background or some research. We'll visit the property with the mindset that, most of the people we meet, they just need to be updated or educated on what they can and cannot do with their property. So we don't go in there with the mindset of, you need to do this, this, and this. We try to educate people and give them an opportunity to, make things right and provide them with whatever documentation they need to, to educate themselves.
And you do find a large percentage of people will voluntarily come into compliance. They didn't know they were out of compliance. They don't want to be out of compliance.
Oh, absolutely. Most of the time they say, "Oh, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me." A lot of times we'll get handshakes and say, "Thank you for letting me know. I didn't know. I wish my neighbor would have told me." Things like that. And I think that's something that's important, that if neighbors can talk to neighbors first, at least give it a chance, because it's very often from my eyes in the field, I hear it all the time.
Honest people make honest mistakes. They don't always know what the code requirements are. My house is my castle. They don't realize that there are rules, and so half of our job, at least, is educating them, making them aware that in over 90% of our cases, we obtain voluntary compliance. Once you advise someone of what the problem is, most people will take care of the problem. In only 10% of the cases do we need to seek legal help.
And I've really encouraged the homeowners and civic associations, in my district, to do that role of education, learn what the codes are, educate people, and talk about it in a positive sense, that the code is our agreement amongst ourselves that these are the things we're going to do with our properties to keep our neighborhoods safe and healthy and show respect for our neighbors. And the more that people on a street will talk to each other, and not either just grumble and complain, or on the flip side, always be calling the government, but to be saying, hey, you've got 4 broken cars in your front lawn, it's really not, it's not cool. Can you put that in the garage, or can you take care of that? Or, your grass is 2 feet high and, there's animals and stuff living in there, and, that's not good for the kids, and it doesn't look great, or, that kind of thing.
And we're continuing in our educational efforts to reach out to the community. We've just had our first code compliance conference this past spring, where we invited, I think we invited literally thousands of HOA presidents to the conference. We had several hundred attend, and it was a series of classes about the codes and giving them an opportunity to work with us. We also do community outreach events. We have a pretty robust website with information about the codes and what we do, and we attend a lot of magisterial district open houses. So we're trying to get out and get the word out and educate the community so they know how to talk to each other about what the codes mean.
Right. Well, why don't we talk about some of those specifics? We've already talked about the overcrowding, the boarding houses, the family +2 rule. Gabe, tell us about things like cars parked in the yard and what we call outdoor storage.
Yeah, no outdoor storage is allowed in the front yard. It's supposed to be confined to the side and rear yard under 100 square feet. Cars in certain zoned areas are not allowed to be parked in the grass in the front yard. Inoperable vehicles, they need to be covered or in a garage, things of that nature. And it goes to aesthetics and making, your house is your castle. You come home and you have pride and you like the way your house looks and your neighbors' surrounding properties look.
And especially when, when you have a whole lot of, maybe it's broken down lawnmowers or it's old chairs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We all have places in the back that we put things, or we get a shed, we put things in it, but if that's in your front yard, it's just not very good.
And a high percentage of the cases, there's always a better option. There's always a place where you could put it in most cases. There's a reasonable solution. It's not that difficult to achieve if you want to be a good neighbor.
Right. And then we have the grass ordinance, and that's one I know in my district very important. And last year when we did the budget, there was a recommendation from the county executive that cut back on that enforcement, and a couple other supervisors and I we thought it was very important that we have grass compliance. And Gabe, talk about that, because that's an important one. The grass can't be over a foot tall, and there's a good reason for that.
Right. And in cases where we receive complaints, like we'll send a grass inspector out. Who I think we have a team of 5 or
we do.
4, a team of 5.
Varies by.
And they have a self-made, grass measuring stick of some sort where they measure the 12 inches. And it's an educational thing. They go up to the door, they introduce themselves, and talk and tell them, your grass needs to be cut and all this stuff. And we give them an appropriate amount of time. I think it's 10 to
14 days.
14 days to cut, and then there's a reinspection upon that. And again, most people, are happy to comply, or they have a reason for the delay.
And Jeff, that one's important because there's a health and safety aspect to that with bugs and animals, Lyme disease, all sorts of stuff.
Absolutely. We get probably 1,500 grass complaints every year, and it really focuses on half-acre lots and smaller. It's really not designed for the large lots where, as you may imagine, the houses are much further apart on the larger lots, and you really don't have the impact. It's a property value aspect of it, certainly the health and safety. And I mentioned earlier that unkept grass on a house may indicate that somebody's not living there and they're not taking care of the house, and we certainly don't want to create an attractive nuisance.
What are some of the other favorite violations, if that's a term, Gabe, that we see that you spend a lot of time on?
Like I said, most of the time it's unpermitted construction, multiple occupancy. Outdoor storage is a big one, especially in this time when the weather's nice.
Right.
It might be because people are more observant, they're out walking their neighborhoods, and issues are more visible, but those are a lot of the main complaints we're getting these days.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about sheds and fences, because sometimes those rules aren't so clear and we don't know what they are. So let us know.
Well, fences on lots under 36,000 square feet cannot be more than 4 feet in the front yard. In the side and the rear, they can go up to 7, and there's no permit required unless it goes. There's no permit required, excuse me, for a fence. But if it gets to 8 feet, then a special permit is required. As far as sheds, no permits required if the shed's under 256 square feet. But the biggest issue we see is oftentimes they'll call the county or they'll do research on their own and see, okay, my shed doesn't need a permit. So, but there's also zoning that goes along with that shed, how close it can be to your neighbor's property line. So if you want it to be close to your property line, it has to be under 8.5 feet in height. If you want it higher, then there's applicable zoning setbacks that you need to follow.
Right, so under 8.5 feet, you can basically put it anywhere you want in the back.
In the side and rear yard, yeah.
But if you're going to be over that, then normally you're going to be pulling it toward the center of your lot.
Yeah, and it's better to talk to our zoning department and bring in a property plat. You can always get specifics before you put that investment and put it in the wrong place.
There you go. Well, and simple rule. I mean, that's a pretty big shed
Yeah.
if you're going to be over 8.5
Right.
feet tall. So you want to think in terms of it doesn't need to loom over your neighbor's yard. So that's an important one. And signs.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rule about signs you can put in your yard?
Well, that's an interesting topic. With construction, while construction's taking place, you can have a construction sign on the property within a certain size. As far as real estate signs, they're permitted, but generally signs are not permitted, other than the couple examples I gave on residential properties.
Except political signs.
Except political signs.
And they give a message and that kind of thing.
Right.
So and that's within a certain size as well.
Right.
And then there's the signs in the right-of-way. As you know, the county is under agreement with VDOT, removing signs in the roadway on certain designated roadways across the county. We're in our second year. Actually, we're in our third year now. Just started our third year of operations. And that's been a very successful program. And we're finding that there are some particularly problematic segments of roadways where as soon as we pull them out, they're right back again. So we talked with the board in June, and we're looking at trying to start up a second crew to address those. So signs and sign proliferation can be detrimental to the community. It's a visual detriment, and we're sensitive to that as well.
It has, the political sign restrictions have worked. I must say much better than I had thought. I wasn't sure that was going to really work, and it has worked extremely well.
It has.
And people are very happy with it. And if there is a safety issue, if somebody does have a sign up on the roadway and it's blocking your view as a driver, call it in, and VDOT will take care of it right away as a safety issue, as well as our county program that's cleaning up the signs.
Right.
So, now you mentioned the noise ordinance, and we're struggling on the board with coming up with a sort of a new revised noise ordinance, because it's not as easy as people might think. But you do noise enforcement all the time.
We do as well, and noise can be very challenging because many times people hear noises and we can't respond fast enough. By the time we get out there, the noise doesn't happen anymore. So it can be challenging to enforce for us. And the noise ordinance needs, as well as the sign ordinance and our other ordinances, need to keep up with community and the community needs. So as you mentioned, the board is considering modifications, amendments to the noise ordinance, which is very important. We're involved in those. And there's been extensive outreach on that noise ordinance to the community, and we got a lot of feedback, and I think it's destined to go back to the board soon for reconsideration.
I know we're going to have a work session in September, and then we're going to keep working on getting a draft together that hopefully addresses all the issues. I wanted to get to one more point before we run out of time. We talked a lot about voluntary compliance today, but Jeff, you mentioned we got that 10% of the time that we need to enforce, and Gabe, you know this because you do it every day. We will issue citations, and we'll take owners to court if we have to.
Absolutely. Under the building code, we actually go work with the chief magisterial's office and get summonses, and we have them have to appear in general district court where fines can be upset.
And I know at every board meeting, we get a list of all the zoning cases
right.
that we have in court in our package. So we know they're there, and I get a monthly report from the zoning department on all the violations that are out there that are pending, so that we can track that stuff. So I know you guys are busy because I see it every month, and I appreciate your work, and I appreciate you coming on the show. I want to thank Jeff and Gabe for being here today. As community members and neighbors, it's important to know how the complaint process works and also what you can do to help. Remember, sometimes just going over and talking to your neighbor can be the best first step. If you'd like more information, contact the Office of Code Compliance at 703-324-1300 or online at the web address listed below. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Braddock Neighborhood News. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or other needs, please contact my office at 703-425-9300 or email braddock@fairfaxcounty.gov. Tune in next month for another edition, and please remember to look for ways to volunteer. Your community needs you. Great, thanks.